Hello, hello. Welcome to Journal Entries. This week, we have Emily Rose Hardy on as a guest. Emily is the host of the Worthy Mother podcast and a certified motherhood studies practitioner. In our conversation, we talk all about mom guilt and the big emotions around that, including shame, and how to go from that place to a place of compassion. Just one example is of when you are screaming at your kids and the guilt that you might feel from that and how to get through that. I even share a specific example of when I flipped out on my son that I've never shared before. We talk about societal norms, what being a good mom looks like, bringing awareness and intentionality to different areas of our life, and ultimately becoming the main character of your story. This might be one of my favorite conversations with a guest, and I know you're going to love it too. So let's jump right in. Hi, I'm Sam, your inner voice and self-trust coach for women who refuse to choose between career success and being fully present with their kids. This is Journal Entries, where we break free from self-sabotage, reconnect with our inner wisdom, and live truly fulfilled lives in both of our roles. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Journal Entries, everybody. Today we have Emily Hardy on, and I'm so excited for you guys to hear from her. Welcome to the show, Emily.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to jump in with this conversation today.
Me too. You told me a little bit about what you want to talk about and the direction you want to go, and it is so relatable and something that I truly think every single mom deals with. But before we get into all of that, why don't you share just a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, so I am Emily. I am a mom of 2 little boys, and that is important because I talk a lot about motherhood and a lot about how we have to have compassion in motherhood for ourselves. And I have a 6-year-old and an almost 4-year-old. So there's a lot going on constantly. And there are a lot of times in my personal motherhood journey where it's like, that's not how I wanted that to go, right? Like, I think everyone can relate to that. So navigating that, being able to share that is important to who I am. I also am a newly divorced mom. So that's a huge part of my life right now. I'm very much into motherhood support, helping moms to know that they are not alone in their struggles and that we are okay if things are hard. There's no shame in that. Really learning how to process that is super important. I used to be an elementary school teacher, and this is kind of my second career, I guess you could say. So that's just a little bit about me, in a nutshell, but obviously there's so much more.
I love that. And I love what you said about we can handle the hard. And I'm sure you've heard the quote of everything is hard. It's almost like choose your hard, right?
Yeah.
Right before we hopped on, I was stalking you on Instagram and I saw a reel that you did back in December, and it was of Christmas lights, and you took yourself on this date almost through this Christmas festival. And I love that. Do you want to talk about what that was and why you did that?
So I'm really big on this idea that we are the main character in our own life. And our kids are the main character in their life. And obviously having little kids, especially in those toddler years, the baby years, they need a lot from us and we have to give a lot to them. And it kind of can take over our lives in a very true way that makes sense, right? But it's also something that's so important for us as an individual to know, we also have to do things for ourselves. And it's okay to do things for ourselves, even if it's not necessary things. So yeah, this past December, we've been doing 50-50 custody with my ex-partner, their dad. And so I have the kids half the time, and the other half of the time it's me. And this year we decided, I decided I wasn't going to take, we've been going to this Christmas light festival that happens nearby the past few years. And I decided with the different dynamic, the prices had gone up. I'm I can't get so caught up in having to maintain all these traditions that aren't necessarily important. And I talk a lot about that, right? But I got the opportunity to go with a friend who was working there and went and walked around the Christmas lights by myself. And there's something about intentionally doing something for yourself that isn't necessary. That's just an extra fun thing. And acknowledging yeah, it would be cool to have my kids here to do this thing with me. But also I deserve to feel the magic for myself. And there are so many opportunities in life where that, like, we can do that. But I think a lot of times we feel guilt, or we feel like that's not the right choice because no one else is benefiting from it. And that's not what we have to make decisions based on. We can make decisions based on whatever feels good for us.
That's so true. I think what you said about nobody else is benefiting from it, I almost feel like as soon as we become a mom, all of our decisions, we feel like they impact somebody, or almost like they have to impact somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like there's guilt or some sort of emotion is attached to doing something if it doesn't impact somebody, and just doing something to do something feels wrong or bad for some reason.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because if you dig into it a little more too, like doing the thing for yourself really probably does impact your kids. Like it does have a positive impact on them. And so we can kind of get around that a little bit of like, I don't want to do things for myself, but okay, if I can reframe it of like doing the thing for myself benefits my child in the long run, that can help to kind of bridge that gap, I guess, of like, maybe I will do the thing for myself. But it doesn't have to be like, you don't have to use that logic to get there. Like, it's also just important and okay to do things for you because like you're totally worthy of doing things for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you said that there are so many opportunities for us moms to do things on our own, my first question was like, there are? Like, but where and when and how and where do you find them? But when you said, you know, the whole thing about doing things on our own makes us a better mom, which I totally believe. And I even say that to people as well. Like, it makes us happier and more patient when we do go home. Using that as your motivation, for me at least, just literally in this moment, I was like, oh, like knowing that, it just opened up a whole world where I was like, oh, well, I could go do this, or I could go do this, or I will go look here for the next event, or I'll go look here, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, even things that you're doing with your kids, I think about like listening to music in the car. I have my almost 4-year-old is like Mickey Mouse obsessed. So he would prefer to like listen to Mickey Mouse Clubhouse music, which, you know, and then my 6-year-old loves rock and roll. So like we've been listening to Metallica, and like he has these like songs that he always, Crazy Train, like just these songs he always wants to play. And we do that. And sometimes it's really fun. But like, I'm also sometimes like, no, it's my turn. We're going to listen to some Taylor Swift, or, you know, we're going to listen to this song I really want to hear. And like choosing to do that and saying, nope, today it's my turn. And next time we're in the car, you get to do it too. It's like, I add myself into that. So it's like, it's not always just about doing the things by ourselves, although like that is important. And I truly believe that every mom should have time to herself, but it's also like when we're with our kids, not necessarily defaulting every single time to them. Like we can choose things for ourselves even when they're involved.
Yeah, I love that you use that example too, because in the car, I still listen to my music, and it's partially because my son hasn't requested otherwise. And I'm like, I'm not going to start that because I know that once I do, he's going to request it. And kind of like we talked about when I was a guest on your podcast, we talked about one of the saboteurs, the sabotaging patterns of avoidance. And that often comes from wanting to avoid a meltdown. And so we just like give in and we're like, sure, we can listen to the Paw Patrol soundtrack. But yeah, there's so much that comes from just being like, no, I'm going to do this for me. But I think that what you've said a couple of times is that there is guilt to that, like guilt of like, I'm not the mom that lets their kid listen to Paw Patrol in the car. I'm not the mom that brings her kids every single place. So how do you feel like, well, I should backtrack. What do you feel like mom guilt is, and how does it show up for so many moms? Why is it showing up for so many moms right now?
Yeah. So first and foremost, mom guilt, this idea of mom guilt, I like to define it as guilt and shame. We use the term mom guilt, but it's not just feeling guilty. It's feeling guilty, like I did something wrong here. I did something not aligned with what I'm supposed to do. And then making that mean something about us, like I'm a bad mom, I'm not doing enough, whatever it is, right? Like there's all kinds of thoughts. It comes about most of the time because of societal messages we've taken in, or like the way we were raised, what we expect what we think we're expected to be as a mother, what we think we need to do. And if you look into that, if you look into like the societal messages we're getting, it is impossible to be that perfect mother. So if we are weighing ourselves and what we're doing against that, we will always be feeling the guilt and shame of not being enough. Like, it's just going to happen because there's no way to be enough in that context. When we are feeling that guilt, when it comes to things like, I should be letting my kid listen to the music, or I should be making sure that every choice I'm making involves my child as like the forefront of the decision. I'm not, going to a workout class by myself on on every Tuesday evening because I should be with my kid, or I do go, but I feel really guilty because that's not what moms are supposed to do. We're supposed to give it all to our kid. A lot of times the underlying belief there of like a good mom is always with her child. If you break that down, if you actually look at that belief, there's a good chance you don't actually believe that to be a good mom, you have to be with your child 100% of the time. Maybe on the surface you do, but if you dig in and understand that like we have to get our needs met, there's a lot of needs we have, including like time and space to ourselves, time to connect with other adults, things like that. Maybe actually being with my kid 100% of the time is not what's going to make me the best mom. Like I can understand and believe that that's not actually true. But if we're just kind of going in autopilot, we're not bringing awareness to like what's underlying that thought that we're having in the first place. The context is so crucial there that if we're just going with it, we will continue to feel that mom guilt. We will continue to feel shame and kind of be stuck in this spiral that really does not benefit anyone.
Mm-hmm. And even the cycle too, like where if you try to break out and you're like, ooh, I feel guilty for doing this, you might go home, feel that guilt and like not do it again. And I totally get that. One of my favorite questions when journaling is asking, is that true? Once you get to that point of like, well, this is why I feel guilty. So my question for you is, how do you get to that point between feeling the guilt and knowing like what that underlying belief is so that you can ask yourself if you actually believe that?
The bringing like awareness to what the actual thought is key in the first place. You have to like know what thought is happening that's making you feel that guilt and shame. There's often a lot more work than with that thought, like, do I believe this? But like understanding I feel like a bad mom because I feel like guilt and shame because I just snapped at my kid when they came up to me and tugged on my shirt, right? Like whatever it is, what was the thought under it? I'm a bad mom because XYZ. And I actually have a resource on this that can share with your listeners on kind of overcoming mom guilt, the steps that we can take for that. But that is so key to bring awareness to it. And it can help like if you journal on it, if you write it down, like write down the thought, bring awareness to it, or just like think, what is the thought behind this feeling? I'm feeling immense guilt. What is the thought? Like do something to make it concrete, right? But there's also like the element of, getting to that place where you can understand, do I believe that thought is true? And we have to get really clear on our own values, what we value as a mother, as a person, to do that. And that is not necessarily an easy process because, again, we've been so inundated with societal messages our entire lives. So however old you are, that many years you've been getting these messages about like what you are supposed to do as a woman, what you are supposed to do as a mother. And parsing apart like what is ours and what is not ours, but just something we've taken in is a challenge. But you have to do it. You have to sit with that and understand, what does it mean to be a good mom? What do I think it means to be a good mom? What do I think society is telling me about that? Do I want to believe all of these things? And that can be done through journaling. That can be done through conversations. I think having conversations with somebody else, whether it's a therapist, a coach, a friend that you trust and want to have this conversation with, just really like digging in and asking the questions. But we do usually have to do that in some outward way, because if it's just all in your brain, it's all muddled together. So writing it down or speaking it out loud can be really powerful. And then knowing that work is never done, because again, like, you're not just going to undo it all. It's not like you become this person who's completely independent of the context and of the world we exist in. That's not realistic. So it's knowing, like, you may still kind of default to things. You will still default to things. You will still default to beliefs that you actually don't hold true, but they're societal beliefs. And you have to constantly be engaging in those practices that allow you to, like, decide, is that for me, or is that just something that I thought was for me?
I love so many things that you said. And I think you're so right too, that it needs to be this like conscious, intentional effort. And you need to like write it down or speak it out or something. Because if not, you feel that feeling so deeply of guilt or shame. I love that you said it's like shame too, because that's the deep rooted feeling beneath it. And without doing something tangible, like speaking or writing, it's just like this icky feeling that you're just carrying with you. But then asking yourself, like, okay, well, what was the thought behind it? Almost immediately, at least for me, and I'm sure like it gets quicker and quicker for people once you do this, you know, if you think of that, you bring awareness to the thought, and it's like, okay, that is something that you can work with versus just this like heaviness of guilt and shame. And also, I was speaking to my therapist, I was going to say once, but many times. And just in various situations, I would say certain thoughts that bubbled up. And honestly, just her reaction of just like, huh, or just like her facial expression was the thing that I was just like, oh, like, is that not expected of me? Or can I do that differently? And it was, you know, just the awareness of the societal norms that we put on ourselves, that we don't have to do it all. We can do things differently. Like I can take things off of my plate and not feel guilty about it. Like we get to design our own motherhood and how that feels too.
Yeah, I think, sometimes like you speak it out loud and it almost sounds ridiculous. Or you're like, wait. Like if someone said that to me, like if someone came to me and said, I feel horrible. My kid came up to me the other day and tried to engage with me in this way. They were trying to get my attention and I was like, back off or whatever, you know, whatever the thing is. And I feel like I'm the worst mom ever, blah, blah, blah. And if someone said that to me, I'd be like, wait, like, like what's going on there? We can't jump to that conclusion. You're a bad mom because of this instant that happened. But like, we do that to ourselves. We constantly do that to ourselves. And so, speaking it out loud, speaking out what the expectation is, whether it's somebody else kind of invalidating that in a way of like, what? Or just yourself like being like, oh, I guess that doesn't match up actually.
Yeah, because the belief beneath that of like yelling at your kids and feeling the shame is more so like a good mom doesn't yell, or like no other moms yell at their kids. And then it's like, well, that's not true. Like every mom at one point or another yells, you know? So then it just almost seems silly, or at least like neutral. It neutralizes it.
It totally neutralizes it. And I think that's something too, that when we're talking about these things, it can be hard because I think sometimes moms will feel like if I just accept it, then I'm being complacent, and I don't want to be snapping at my kid in that way, or I don't want to be like feeling like I always need to escape the house or whatever it is. And it's not about like not doing things to change that. But a lot of times it's like the actual thought we should be having is, I just snapped at my kid when they did something that was totally not that weird or out of the norm. And my reaction was way overstated. It shouldn't be that our thought goes to, I'm a bad mom, but maybe my needs aren't being met. Like there's a lot more compassion there. And yes, you can still change what's happening. You can still work towards something different. You can still feel guilt about it, right? But it's not letting it get into that area of shame that's so just like icky and toxic and kind of all consuming.
So you said the word self-compassion, and that's what I was actually going to ask you about next. How is it that you are able to help somebody, a mom, feel compassion, especially going from that place of if they are feeling that shame? I feel like going from shame to compassion is so drastic. So do you have any tips or guidance on like how do you get yourself to go from that one place to another?
It's definitely, again, hard because these patterns are so deeply ingrained in us. When we understand shame as kind of existing in the dark, we understand it as like something that we keep inside and it festers. When somebody can speak to that and speak to like what they're feeling shame about and put it out there, and then receive compassion from somebody else, that, you know, you don't have to feel that that affects your worth as an individual because of XYZ, right? Being shown compassion can be huge. And having those conversations and really understanding and breaking down those beliefs is really important. I think, too, being able to position yourself in the context we exist in, the context we are mothering in. I feel like for me, having self-awareness really is also having awareness of the context. And we can have so much more self-compassion when we understand that the asks are impossible. The things that we are holding ourselves to are like, it's not humanly possible to be this super mom that is out there and everybody kind of believes we should be, even if we know that we can't be, you know? To me, that piece really does open the door for self-compassion, because we can acknowledge like, this is not a me problem. This is a societal problem, and I may not be able to change that, and it may still continue to be a problem, but it's not personalized to me. That's easier said than done, because there's a lot of work that comes with understanding the context and then like truly deeply bringing that to everything in life. And again, especially because there are things we're going to feel guilty about that are very valid, right? That it's like, I don't want to react that way. So it's complex. There's no one right answer to it. But if we can just approach all of that with like curiosity and compassion, I mean, what would you want for your kids? Would you want your kids to be beating themselves up about this perceived failure? Like if they have the same perceived failure that you feel like is happening in your life, would you want them to be beating themselves up over it, or to be compassionate towards themselves? And my guess is you would want them to be compassionate towards themselves. So showing ourselves that same compassion is huge. And again, easier said than done.
Yeah. So we've talked about emotions like compassion, shame, guilt, all these things. And it's been around like doing things or not doing things as mom. I'm curious if you see any other big emotions come up when, as moms, we are trying to like do it all, when we try and especially do it all from a place of like maybe not doing things for ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, like stress and overwhelm are huge, right? Like we can't do it all. I think like that right there, like we cannot do it all. No person out there can do it all. When we are trying to do it all, when we're trying to like be the amazing moms, the amazing wives, the amazing employees or bosses or whatever it is, right? And we can definitely strive for greatness in all those areas of our lives. But when we are expecting the most from ourselves and making every mistake mean something about who we are, it perpetuates like stress and overwhelm, because we're going to continually be adding more to our plates and falling absolutely short of that because we can't do it all. So that's definitely, I think probably most moms can relate to that, right?
Yeah.
The feeling of just being completely in chaos.
Yeah, that's the number one thing I hear from moms and women in general is those two words, stress and overwhelm, is what they feel on a daily basis. And I think you're probably right. It is that we're trying to not only do all the things, but what you said too is that we're making every failure mean something, where it's like, I'm listening to the Let Them theory right now by Mel Robbins in a very brief, small nutshell. It's like, just, you know, let them think that thing about you. Let them be disappointed in you. And it's like, yeah, it's okay to like not make certain mistakes, like define you, because it doesn't define you, you know?
Yeah. Well, and knowing that like, and a lot of times they're not going to think that about you. Like a lot of times we're just putting that on ourselves. So it kind of is both ways. If people are judging you for falling short or whatever it is, let them. But also don't be like making yourself believe that they're going to judge you for that, because a lot of times that's not how it works, right? A lot of times we're our harshest critic. We're the only one noticing these things and making it mean something. So that's really important. Another feeling, just to kind of go back to that, is grief. I think a lot of moms do face like grief of what was or of what they thought the experience of motherhood was going to be, because again, we come into it with such strong expectations. Even if we've never consciously thought about what we expect it to be like, you probably have a lot of underlying assumptions of what motherhood's going to be like, and then it always is different, right? And a lot of times it's a lot harder. It's like even facing like dissatisfaction and the guilt that comes with that and all of the things, it's like the grief of what I thought this was going to be like can be very, very real, very present, and not necessarily something we acknowledge to moms. And I think that can be really complex. And it's like, but I love my child, I wouldn't want to change this, but like the grief is deep and real, and I don't even know what I'm grieving.
Yeah. Even the grief of how you thought you would be as a mom. Like you thought you'd be the mom that never yelled. You thought you'd be the mom that, you know, would never bend over backwards and you'd stay firm on certain things, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So you started off this episode talking about main character energy, loving that term. What is main character energy and being the main character in your own story? And then how do you become that version of her? That's probably a loaded question, but
yeah. Well, no, I think it's really important. And this is kind of like we have to go again to the context and thinking about our own families and thinking about your own parents not being the ones who are in charge of your life as a 30-something-year-old woman, right? Like, it's like we can understand that we each are our own person living in this world. We have our own lives. And that's true for us in relation to our own parents. It's also true of our children in relation to us. And we do so much for our children. We give them the opportunities and help them develop and all these things with the eventual goal of them being to like go out into the world and do their own thing. And that starts in our homes, like letting them be their own people, all of that, right? We can understand how important that is, that they are their own individual people. We may not always like that, but it's true and it's important. The same is true for you in that relationship with your child. You are also a person. Your life did not stop the moment you got pregnant and now it's all about your kid. You still have a story. You still have growth. We are constantly growing. We have the entire life ahead of us, right? It doesn't just stop when we have kids and now everything's about our kids, because that's not really fair to them either. Like, again, they are these people who are growing into independent main characters in their own little story. And so understanding that and accepting that is important. Like actually thinking about it, right? We have to like have the awareness of like, this is something that is true. I am my own person. My journey through life continues from this point as a mother, but like also as an individual. And then choosing things for yourself is kind of the next step of that. So when you're making decisions in life, any decisions in life, there are so many decisions we make on a daily basis, bringing awareness to how you're making those decisions. And is it always at the benefit of somebody else? A lot of times when we are kind of caught in those cycles of always putting our kids' needs so far above ours, the decisions we're making, we're always considering their needs above our own, which I know this can be like tricky to talk about because sometimes moms feel like, well, but my kids do always come first. And I'm not saying they don't, right? Like you can be like, I would do anything for my kid. Their health, their happiness is so important to me, and I will never make a decision that harms them. But in that, you can still prioritize your needs and decisions. And that looks a lot of different ways, but it's so important that we just consider whether we're doing that or not, right? Like we really look at like when we're making decisions, are we looking at our own needs? Are we looking at our own desires? Again, that takes a lot of reflection and introspection and like actually stopping the just automatic cycles that we're in. But it can be so important. And really, like, it's a great thing to model for our kids making decisions for ourselves, because they will grow up and enter into the world we live in. And we all know, like, the crazy expectations in the workplace. You know, I think things are changing. I think millennials and Gen Z, like, there's been pushback to, like, the hustle culture and giving your whole life to your career and things like that. But our kids will grow up and enter into this world. I don't think it's going to 180 completely shift in the time till they grow up, right? Some people have teenagers who are getting to that point soon. And it really is like acknowledging that we can model for them, considering our own needs and putting our own needs high on the priority list when we are making decisions. Like that's a really important skill to have, a really important way to kind of go about life that, again, most of us were not taught to do that. And if you like feel like you might be a people pleaser because of things from your childhood, like very likely you are not making decisions for the good of yourself. You're making decisions to please other people or put other people's needs really high on that list, regardless of how it impacts you.
I feel like this can seem so big almost, like, oh my gosh, I don't know, should I start a new career, go back to college, these big things. But also when you were talking, I was thinking that this could even start with like dinner tonight. Like, what do I want for dinner? Even if it's not on the plan that you made on Sunday or something. But then it also reminded me of a time when my son and I were watching TV, and I'm not really a big TV watcher. I never watch it during the day. And it was a weekend. It was a Sunday, actually. I was overstimulated all weekend. And I was like, on Sunday, I'm going to watch the Buffalo Bills football game. And I'm barely even a fan of football. I'm like, this is what I'm going to do for me. Whatever time the game was on, I turned it on. And my son flipped out. And he wanted whatever show was on. And I then flipped out on him. I'm like, you don't even know what my favorite TV show is. And he didn't say anything. I was like, do you? Like, what do you think my favorite TV show is? And now when I ask him that, he thinks it's football because of that time. And that day we didn't even watch football. I ended up putting on whatever he had, and I opened up my laptop and ended up watching it. But yeah, that's what we're teaching our kids when we get to that breaking point of like not choosing ourselves in those small decisions.
And it's okay, right? Like there has to be the self-compassion on that side too of like, what was the right decision there? Maybe it was to keep the football game on and like have the lesson be learned, but like also it sounds like you made a decision that was good for everyone. You just watched it on your computer. You didn't have to deal with the meltdown, right? It's like we can have the compassion for ourselves in any of these situations and know like this isn't about getting it right every single time, but having the thought of like, that was a boundary that maybe I wanted to set and I didn't set. How would I react next time? You know, it's something you can think about and decide whether you want to choose you or him in that moment. It's not like a me or him choice, but it is like, how do I want to react in that situation? What do I believe is most important? Then maybe following through with that, maybe not, but a lot of it is the bringing the awareness to it and like understanding where we are making those decisions from.
Yeah, I feel like the biggest thing I took away from today is the awareness and so much intention around just bringing awareness to the thoughts and the beliefs and like what it is that you're actually thinking in that moment that's driving the emotion behind it is just so enlightening and will then help you get to the compassion or get to the next step that you need so that you can feel how you want to feel and get to that main character of your own life and not being so driven by the little people in our life, but big people too, right?
Yeah. All of it. There's a lot of things vying for our attention and our energy, and we get to choose where that goes. And yes, a lot of times it will be to our kids because they do require a lot of us, but it doesn't have to be them running the show. But sometimes they will.
Yeah. Emily, this is so good. Thank you so much for your time.
Yes.
I will put a link to your freebie. It was the guide to reframe mom guilt.
Yes.
So I'll put that in the links. Was there anything else that you wanted to share with my listeners or where they can find you?
Yeah, just if you like listening to podcasts, I have a podcast, Worthy Mother Podcast. Samantha was on recently and we had an incredible conversation about self-sabotage. It's something if you are into these conversations that do bring awareness to those societal expectations, it's a good place to go just to be engaged in those kind of thoughts and, digging into the awareness around that. But I'm also on Instagram at Honestly Emily Rose. It's a good place to find me. Would love to connect.
Perfect. Thank you again, Emily.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thanks for joining me for today's journal entry. If something resonated with you, I'd love to know about it. Screenshot this episode, share it on social media, and tag me at samantha.s.says. Or even leave a review, which will help more women find this podcast to create more fulfillment in their career and as a mom. And hey, if you're thinking, I wish I could get more of this, I've got you covered. Click on the link in the show notes, which I customize each week based on what we're talking about. And I always include the link to the Calm Mind Blueprint, which are my 5 journal prompts to go from overwhelm to inner peace in 2 to 10 minutes a day. Subscribe so that you catch my Thursday 5-minute journal with me episodes and next week's full episode where we will continue this journey together. I'll see you then.